Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for Tuesday, June the 12th, 2012. Glad you could join me this afternoon. The one area that I want to talk about today is here in the Eastern Pacific. We had Invest Area 93E, and that's kind of fizzling out. Now we have 94E, and this one I think has a better chance of development. You can also see this large cluster of thunderstorms that was headed down towards the Gulf Coast last night. This satellite picture kind of old from the Hurricane Center. I'll show you a more recent one in just a minute. But this feature up here over the continent is called a derecho. Totally different story for another day. But down here in the tropics, we are looking for this area now, Invest Area 94E, probably going to develop, and I'll show you why. This is where it's located on the University of Wisconsin. They have a really nice site at the CMISS Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies, CIMSS that is. And you can see this I is where the center, the supposed center, if you will, of the low pressure area is off the coast of Costa Rica here. This is, of course, the Pacific coast of Central America, and this is the Southeast Pacific. So that gets your bearings as to where we are. Looking at a more recent satellite picture, you can tell there is sort of a broad area of low pressure overall, just looking at the cloud pattern, the wind shear in the area. I don't know if you can see that, but it is fairly light, 5 to 10 knots at the most, with an anticyclone aloft, that umbrella of protection, if you will, sitting about right smack dab over Central America, providing a pretty good area of upper level winds over this system. Going out into time, the GFS model, I wanted to analyze that and show you what it's thinking, quote unquote. This is the Global Forecast System, the main American operational model, and it analyzes the investigation area, 94E, as a 1009 millibar low, sitting there right off the coast of Costa Rica. This is basically the current forecast map, or the current position map for the forecast, I should say, valid around 8 o'clock this morning. In other words, this is the 12Z initial map. So this shows you where everything is to start. And you'll watch this system right here and what happens to it. As we go out to 24 hours, this will be valid tomorrow morning or Wednesday morning. And now the GFS paints in the precipitation and other features, and you can see it closes off the low, seems to organize it pretty well. You got strong northeast winds, north-northeast, and then you have westerly on the southwest side. So it's ramping it up as the bottom line. When we go out to 48 hours, it really starts to close that system off, and you can see the bending of the wind flags here as they come around. A definite small but possibly rapidly developing system. We'll have to wait and see how this pans out. Water temperatures down here very warm, and the upper level winds very favorable. On this particular map, this is valid on Thursday morning. Now let's go up in the atmosphere to what we call the 850 millibar level, or about 5,000 feet, and you can tell that the system is fairly well organized. It still has sort of a strange shape to it, but right in the middle it's very circular, and that's what we're looking for. We call this vorticity, and in particular I like to look and see how concentric everything is and how round it is. Granted, it still has sort of an odd shape overall, but in the core of it, if you will, the central area, it is coming together nicely in the model, and that shows me a healthy developing system. Finally, up at the outflow level, or 200 millibars, way up in the atmosphere, we see that evidence of a strong anticyclone aloft. This is clockwise flowing air coming out from around the system, which is located right here, so the air is able to go up and then spread out. That's what I've been talking about, that you need to look for tropical development. If it was sitting up here in the Caribbean Sea, the wind would be blowing over the top of it, and that is not conducive for development. Where it's situated down here off the coast in 48 hours of El Salvador and Guatemala, it should be sitting under fairly favorable upper level winds, and therefore I think this has a pretty good chance at developing. Finally, out at 72 hours, this will be valid on Friday morning. Not very well organized in the model. We'll wait and see how this really pans out. The model might be having a difficult time resolving it. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not going to develop that much. Maybe its proximity to the land here is inhibiting it. Nonetheless, you folks down here in Guatemala, southeast Mexico, the coast of El Salvador, basically the southeast Pacific Ocean, Central American coastline, you guys watch out for this, because at the very least, heavy tropical rainfall and squally weather coming for your area over the next couple of days. Finally, at 96 hours, it moves on into and across, at least according to this one model, the Gulf of Tehuantepec, which is right here in southeast Mexico. That region sort of crosses that and into the extreme southern Bay of Campeche. If it were to do that, it would take whatever name, if it was named in the East Pacific, and lose that and gain the sea name in the Atlantic. That's interesting. It does happen from time to time that they do cross land masses. So if this does develop and crosses over Mexico and into the extreme southern Gulf of Mexico, what we call the Bay of Campeche, then if it was still a tropical cyclone and it was strong enough to be a storm, it would be Tropical Storm Chris. In the Eastern Pacific, it would get the sea name for the Eastern Pacific, and I think it's Carlotta, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. We'll see what happens. Finally, at day 5, this is valid on Sunday morning. Lots of low pressure all through here as the MJO pulse comes into the region and makes this whole area kind of fertile and favorable. No one system really jumps out. 5 days out, kind of hard to put too much weight on this as to what will really happen. The good news, I guess you could say, at least we don't see a glaring, obvious big hurricane sitting in here, just different centers of low pressure, East Pacific, Bay of Campeche, Northwest Caribbean, general unsettled weather across this region over the next few days. Whether or not something consolidates and actually develops, time will tell. I'll talk about it again tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that system. The Atlantic Basin is nice and quiet, which is good news. So we'll see what goes on with Invest Area 94E in my update tomorrow. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, my website, hurricanetrack.com, and I'll speak with you again tomorrow.